going on? You're now tuned in to PVD Horror. I'm Brandon, and I'm joined by my co-host Dave. A couple of weeks ago, we were able to do like a different type of episode featuring myself and Dave, where we kind of switched roles from doing our normal interviews, where we kind of just did them on ourselves. Dave was able to interview me. Now today, I'm going to interview Dave, and see what he likes about horror and to kind of like give you guys an insight on Dave.
I'm super nervous, but I wanted to ask you,
Yep.
what was it like having it flipped and you kind of sitting there answering questions?
It was a little different because it was just like at certain times I knew I was stumbling over my words and kind of going a little bit too fast on certain points. And then even when I do my famous question of like asking someone what their favorite albums are, it's kind of hard when you're on the spot. And I know that, but
Yeah.
hey, let's see how you feel, Dave.
Yeah.
Fucking questions. What are some of your favorite albums or like bands or anybody like out there like that inspired you over the years?
Yeah. So music has always been like, I always feel like my life has a soundtrack,
Yeah.
and it's changed over the years,
Mm-hmm.
which I've always appreciated. Like, I'll go through different phases where I'll be like really into this genre, this artist. And the thing that like I say to people, and some people like are always surprised to hear this, like growing up, I was super into hip hop and R&B.
Mm-hmm.
And that was like just everything to me. Like, and when I say R&B, I mean like real like R&B jams,
Yeah.
like slow jams. And people always like they can understand the hip hop part, but when I'm like, you know, talking about like SWV and like Tony Braxton and like real R&B, people are always like a little thrown off. And I'm like, there's like an R&B station on XM
Mm-hmm.
Sirius, and I listen to that all the freaking time.
Yeah.
And for me, it's like mellow. I just like that kind of vibe. And that
Mm-hmm.
for me, like kind of fits just the way I see the world. Maybe I don't come off that way, but it's like I'm more of a mellow person. I'm not into like really like heavy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but hip hop, I was big into hip hop too, like Wu-Tang, Mob Deep. Um, Tupac was a huge one for me too. So like Wu-Tang and Tupac and Mob Deep were probably like my favorites growing up, but I dabbled in all that. And then I shifted into like an emo phase for a little period of time, which was awesome. Brand New, Taking Back Sunday, some Fall Out Boy, Saves the Day, tons of emo bands that Brand New is one of my favorite bands of all time. Then I shifted into other types of music. So I love indie music, indie rock, indie pop, indie anything like Toro Noir, Dive, Beach Fossils. Those are some of my favorite bands now. And then overarching during all of this, one of my favorite all-time bands has been The Cure. And that was like when I was growing up, my sisters were older than me, and I would hear them play like some music like that. And I heard them play The Cure once, and I was just like right away, I was hooked. And it's like always been a love of mine that like I have like a collection of like all their albums and
Mm-hmm.
books and magazines. And like I don't really talk about that much because like not, I don't know how, like I know people like it, but like not too many people of my age, I guess. Like it's
Yeah.
some older generations. And I also love the Smiths and Morrissey, and that's kind of another one that kind of reminiscent of The Cure. So yeah, it's my music taste is all over the place, but like
Mm-hmm.
I think back to certain times and I think about those times, but it's all usually like accompanied with like also the music that I was listening to at that time too. So it's like music is just always happening for me.
Yeah. And that was the same thing because it was like after I had gone back and listened to the episode that me and you had, that when you interviewed me, I'm just like, because I'm just on that, you're in the spot and you're just kind of being trying to name something that you can. And it sounded like you were practicing this. You had like everything like written down because you were able to hit every nail on the head.
Well, I
Feel
did
like,
think about what would I
yeah,
say
yeah.
if you asked me that question. I did think about it.
And I was listening and I was like, damn, how could I forget that I like this? How could I like that? Like, you know
You
what I
didn't
mean?
say J. Cole, and I know you've always
Oh,
been a
J.
big J. Cole
Cole,
fan.
Kendrick Lamar, and then
Yeah.
R&B too. R&B is also a big thing for me. AJ Blige. So
And if I think about another period of time in my life, I think about like when me and you first became friends, and just
Yeah.
your influence in my life when we first met was like you would share some albums with me,
Hmm.
and that was like another resurgence for me and back into hip hop a little bit more because I'd gotten away from it for a while.
Yeah.
And you shared some newer artists at that time, and then that kind of resurged my love for hip hop again. So like Kendrick Lamar, I remember like when you shared that Section 8 album,
Yeah.
um
Yeah.
Danny Brown, Action Bronson,
Hmm.
there was a few others, Absol, Schoolboy
Yeah.
Q. And that, like, when I think back about that time, I think about that music, and I still listen to all those artists today. But like I said, it's like it's funny that like different periods of my life, I always like can think about like what I was listening to at that time.
Hmm. So now horror,
Yeah.
I mean, like, let's go back. Like, I have that question. I always want to talk. I want to ask someone like their first time experiencing a horror film. Like, just what went through your head? How old were you? Like, and what movie was it that just got you into horror? Because
Yeah.
I think we talked before. It was something your grandmother, you
So
know.
I like with that, like
Mhm.
she liked, it was such an interesting experience. So I would go to my grandparents' house. Like my parents both worked like multiple jobs, and my grandmother would like, you know, babysit me or whatever. And I would stay
Yeah.
at their house sometimes. But like when I would stay at their house, she would put on like an old classic horror film. Like it might be something Alfred Hitchcock, or I think we watched
Mhm.
Psycho at her house. And liked, she hated being scared, but I think she loved it at the same time. And
Yeah.
the funniest freaking thing, she would watch scary scenes like this. Like, so for people listening, she would put her hands over her eyes, but like open up her fingers so she could still see. And I think that like gave her like a feeling of like there's a barrier between me and whatever it is that's scaring me. But if it was like really, really scary, she would go in the hallway, and there was a mirror in the hallway with the reflection could see the TV, and she would watch it through the mirror. And I just remember being young and being like, wow, that's awesome. And that is so funny. And it just
Mhm.
stuck with me. And that kind of, then I had this VHS, Vincent Price's Creepy Classics,
Mhm.
and I would watch that on repeat. And I think it was because it was like it was a lot of like older horror clips, a lot of stuff with Vincent Price, and there was Night of the Living Dead. The intro scene is on
Yeah.
there. They're coming to get you, Barbara. So that was like my first experience with that, but it was just on like a clip of it, and I would watch that on repeat. And I think I was already kind of accustomed to it because watching those films with my grandma. And then
Yeah.
later, I remember I was homesick or it was a weekend or something. And when I grew up, where I grew up, there was like not a lot of kids on my street, and it wasn't like the best place to like just go out, and I couldn't really be alone where I lived back then. And so I'd stay in quite a bit, I think, and of watching TV. And I watched Nightmare on Elm Street 5,
Okay.
and Freddie was like, and I remember that it's a boy, and like he's the church scene. That scene stuck with me. I loved it. I absolutely freaking loved it. And then there was all these other little like things that happened. Like I snuck out of my room to see what my parents were watching, and it was the scene. Out of all the scenes, it was the scene of Pennywise in the sewer. And I was like,
Okay.
oh my God. And I ran back to my room, and I was like devastated after that. Um, Twin Peaks, like my family
Mhm.
used to watch that. It was kind of like a family thing, but that
Oh.
music, the intro music in Twin Peaks, scared the living hell out of me. And
Mm.
anytime my sisters loved it and they would play the soundtrack, every time I heard it, I would just be in my room terrified. And I kind of loved the feeling of being scared. And I think it was like kind of like my grandma. I think I liked being scared. I liked feeling something that felt like uncomfortable. But then knowing also that I'm like still safe from, whatever it is. And then the
Yeah.
final thing that kind of like solidified my love for horror, I went to the drive-in with my parents, and they play two movies. If you go to our rustic drive-in, there's always like a family-friendly movie, and then the rated R movies are always second. I guess the idea is they'll either leave or the kids might be asleep. Um, Silence of the Lambs was the second film, and the Buffalo Bill scene where he's like dancing in his skin suit.
Yep.
Horrible, horrible for a little kid. And it was like that movie was pretty scary for a kid, and just I loved it. I loved the genre because of that stuff.
So now your parents, you said they were into horror too, or not
No,
as much?
no, my mom does not like horror. My dad likes movies, so he'll
Yeah.
watch anything. He's more of like action. So I used to watch like Steven Seagal and Jean-Claude Van Damme and Arnold Schwarzenegger,
Yeah.
like action movies with him. So that's
Hmm.
more of like his, and he loved westerns, but I never really got into the western thing, unfortunately. Um, my mom does not. She's watched like ironically, she watched uh Warlock with me a ton of
Oh,
times. She really loved Julian Sands, and
yeah.
so like actually we've been talking about that again because of the tragic thing with Julian Sands disappearing. So, but it's like that was another strange thing. I couldn't believe she watched that with me a ton of times. But like my dad would watch anything, so I've seen like we watched Pet Cemetery as a family. My mom had to leave the room when uh Gage gets hit by the truck. I think she left and refused to come back in after that. She was done. But yeah, no, they're not huge horror fans, and they kind of think like every now and then they'll be like, it's kind of like where did that come from? Because it's not from
Yeah.
us.
Yeah. So that, yeah, just like how you asked me, now you said you had asked me about my parents, like what did they say? What do your parents think about PVD horror?
Um, they think it's great
Yeah.
because so they didn't really understand how wide we were connecting with people until people started to see the last name or say like realize that like I was their son. So they had
Yeah.
an experience where our buddy Dilo draws, his wife works at the town hall in my town, and my parents went there, and she said how like, oh, I know your son, and you know she said how connected through PVD horror. They're like, oh, that's small world. And then they went to the vet to bring the dog to the vet, and the vet tech was like, you're I don't know how he figured this out, but he's like, your son's from PVDR. He does I go to the movie screenings. And they're like, oh, okay. And then it just became a little bit of a pattern. And it was like just small world Rhode Island stuff.
Yeah.
But I think they kind of started to get it, and they really loved when we first started, and we used to do a lot of like the charity events when we were able to do that a little bit more and connecting with the food drive. They liked the fact that we were using our passion and our love for
Yeah.
stuff like that, and now they understand that now we're like supporting other like local artists, and you know, so that they just like the way that we're using our platform to help other people and also get these cool experiences. My mom was super psyched when we got D Wallace on. She was thought that
Oh
was
yeah.
so cool. And she listened. That was like they have not listened to any of our episodes except for D Wallace, and I think I got them to listen to Tony Todd.
Just listen to it, mom.
So yeah, that's been cool, and they support anything I do. I'll never forget though when I first got my tattoo. I just had the Michael Myers face at the time because it's obviously took a while. My mom saw me
Yeah.
in a short sleeve shirt. She was, "What did you do to your arm? Why do you have that ugly face on there?" So like she's always struggled with like why I love this, I think, but like she's just, you know, supportive of whatever as long as we're doing good stuff.
Yeah. That's cool, you know. So now, would you count The Silence of the Lambs at the drive-in as the first the horror movie you've seen at the theater, or
Um,
on the big
I think
screen?
I think I would. I think I would. The first rated R horror film that I saw like in an actual like sit down theater was Brain Scan, and that's one of
Okay.
my all time favorites. I saw it in second grade with with a buddy of mine. My sister brought
Mm.
us, and she let us go in the movie, and she went to go see something else. And
Mm.
I freaking love Brain Scan. I talk about it all the time, and it's part of it is that nostalgia though too. Like
Yeah, I didn't know that that was the first movie that you've seen in the theater. So
yeah,
now it connects, like, you know, because definitely Brain Scan is a classic and one of my favorites. But I never knew like that big tight of a grip that you had on that film. That
yeah.
was your first one in the theater. That's awesome.
And that was a friend of mine who like I had just moved to the town I was in, so like that was, and he was like the first person I like started to hang out with, and you know, moving to a new town when you're young, it's kind of like intimidating. So, um, you know, just I think it is like a nostalgia with that is like something I
Yeah.
hang on to.
Now, like, because like me and you, we met at work. It just so happens we had a flood in the basement, and then we started going over like just normal conversations, and then we like just bumped into horror.
Yeah.
Before that time, like who did you really have that outlet of horror with? Like
Nobody.
your life? No
Nobody.
one. Yeah.
Nobody. I remember before that, I'm trying to think. So I went to a couple of horror conventions before that.
Mhm.
And so actually, ironically, this is like how scarce that was in my life. Um, so I had an ex that would go to horror conventions, but like I wouldn't consider her a horror fan, but she would like entertain it.
Yeah.
There were some things that she thought were cool. But actually there was an individual with disabilities that I worked with at one of the so I worked at an adult group home before me and you worked at the children's group home. He loved
Mhm.
horror. And he was actually, we drove to Horror Hound weekend in Pennsylvania together. Um, he struggled a little bit, so that kind of put a damper on the weekend. But like when we were there, he
Yeah.
met Pinhead, and I was like, and it was like the first. So it was funny because I was working technically, but I was like
Mhm.
enjoying myself, and I was like kind of as the weekend was going, I was like, I went from being like kind of uptight and like being like, oh, this is, I'm here for him. Then realizing like, I freaking love this actually. Like I knew I was going to enjoy it, but like, I didn't, that was my first convention. And I was like more thinking like, oh, I'm just bringing him to a convention. And then I was like, actually, no, this is kind of for me too. Like, there's no reason why I can't be sitting here enjoying myself just as much as he's enjoying himself. And I took him to see, I think both Hostels, uh,
Mhm.
House of a Thousand Corpses, a ton, a ton of horror movies we would see opening weekend. Every time I was working with him, he would want to, he still does it to this day. He still goes to every single, like, he goes to more than just horror, but he loves horror. He still goes every opening weekend. But that was like the only person I had before I met you. And he's a
Yeah.
great guy. It just, but it was like more of a working relationship because I would, mostly actually, even when I'd stopped working with him, I picked him up a few times, and his staff would be like, "Where are you going?" And I'm like, "I'm going to take him to see," and I would say like some gory film, and they're like, "Oh, okay." But yeah, no, like other than that, my friends don't like horror, don't dabble. They've gone to a couple of our, like a few of them have gone to our movie nights just to support, but like, yeah.
Yeah. That's the same. That's why I brought that up, because a lot of my friends, they're not into it, and so it was always something that it was just like, okay, I like this. And then it's like the same situation, like with your mom said that, oh, you're crazy, you have those tattoos on your.
Yeah,
When people see my tattoos on my leg, I have Michael Myers, Jason, Freddy's hand, I'm considered crazy. You know what I mean? But it's like at the same time, those tattoos reflect on a relationship with my grandmother. And
mhm.
so, what do the tattoos mean to you that you have?
For me, it's kind of symbolic. So
Mhm.
this is something I've struggled with probably for a long time. It's a side of me. It's a part of who
Yeah.
I am. Like I can't like it's an interest, but it goes a little bit more than that, I guess, for us, because we care about it, obviously, the genre and like the films. And I know it's just film, but to us it also has some meaning, and we relate to it, or it's cathartic. It's something that's like therapeutic for us at times. It has a lot of different purposes in our life, but it's also something I freaking like a lot, quite a bit. So
Yeah.
for me to get that tattoo was actually me feeling like I was accepting a part of who I am, and like kind of not afraid to just say this. Like I thought about it later. I was like, I'm gonna walk around with this freaking tattoo on my arm, and
Mhm.
like everywhere I go, people are gonna say like, the guy has a fucking horror movie tattoo on his arm. Like I
Yeah.
knew that was the thing, and I purposely only did it halfway so that like if I knew if I like had a job where I didn't want people to see that, I could hide it. And I'm kind of glad I did that because I do.
Yeah.
um, but it was part of me. For me, that tattoo was an expression of like saying I'm okay with accepting who I am, because I
Mhm.
feel like I kind of hid that for a long time.
Yeah. And so that's the thing with me. It's like I have them on my legs, but sometimes when I wore shorts to work, the kids would see it and oh my God, fucking you look like Chucky. I like Michael Myers. And it was just like weird because I'm sitting there looking at him and like, okay, guy, like relax. I'm glad you like horror and everything
Yeah.
like that. But
It is funny because, like, in our field, like we working with kids or
Yeah,
young adults, like it is like conversation starter when they see it. People, will
yeah,
respond to it whether they like it or not is a different story, but like it does start conversations.
yeah. It definitely does. Now, I know you brought up the Horror Hound convention. Like, what are some of your favorite conventions around, that's
Yeah.
closer to us, I mean, that you love to visit and some that you may miss?
Yeah. I miss Rock and Shock
Hmm.
because I went many years to that one. Soon as I like after I did that Horror Hound one, which was in Monroeville,
Yeah.
Pennsylvania. After I did that, I just was like, oh, there's one around here. This is so much more convenient. So I started to go to that one. I met George Romero there. I
Hmm.
met Robert Englund there. When we went, we met some cool people too, like Adam Green, which Tony Todd's been there. I actually never went up to Tony Todd when he was there, just because he was always busy every time and it just didn't work out. Same with Bruce Campbell. I've been at
Yeah.
conventions with Bruce Campbell and never wanted to stand in the line, which I kind of regret now.
Hmm.
But Rock and Chuck was just easy. It was local. It was like, I don't know, it was fun. I got introduced to toe tag there with like the August Underground films, which I fell in love with. So that kind of was like a cool experience. Um, I had fun at CT Horror Fest the year that we went. I do hope to go back to that one again. Monster Mania is great. It's just, it's a drive for us. So that's the only problem with that. Monster Mania is a lot of fun.
Yeah. Now, who's your favorite horror actor or actress that you've met at
Uh,
one of the ones?
I mean, Robert England was like a big deal for me. And I actually went to go see him at a Monster Mania.
Mhm.
And by the time I got in line, I was in there for a little bit. Some guy comes up and says, we're actually cutting the line off here. So anyone that's after this is not gonna has to go because he's done for the day. He's taking too long talking to the people. So I had to go. I had to leave.
No.
And I drove all the way to New Jersey to go meet him. And I was like devastated. And I was kicking myself for not jumping in the line earlier. My whole thought process was I'm gonna wait a little bit till the line dies down, and it did. And
Mhm.
then they cut it off. So, flash forward, he went to Rock and Shock and I got to meet him there. I showed him my tattoo. He asked if he could take a picture of it. He was like very excited. He's like, I'm going to put it on the website. I don't think it ever got on the website, unfortunately. But he was awesome. And that was like one of those moments where you meet somebody and
Mhm.
they meet or exceed your expectations. So that was great. George Romero was another huge like favorite of mine.
Mhm.
But like just like a step below them as far as favorites, meeting the Twin Peaks people, so Ray Wise and Cheryl Lee Fenn. But when I met Ray Wise, I couldn't get words out. I was like trying to tell him how like much I love Twin Peaks and him, and I could not express words, and I must have looked crazy.
I think I had to say something. I said he's a
Yeah,
big fan.
you did. You had to speak for me because I couldn't say anything. I just
Yeah.
totally. I've never gotten so starstruck that I wasn't able to speak. But Twin Peaks is like something that is like just always been there for me, and like I really love that show. So seeing him felt so surreal.
Mhm.
Uh, but that was really special for me. That one.
Yeah. Now you've been to a few of this man's events. What is it like meeting him? Talking about Joe Bob Briggs. You were able to go to the
Yeah. Oh,
show.
Joe Bob. Yeah, that was fun. That was a lot of fun. He is just I don't know, like when I thought about meeting him, I was like, I don't know what I'm gonna say, or like he's just super freaking nice.
Yeah.
And like you don't feel nervous when you go up to him because he just has this way about him that just like is calm and ease, and he's nice. And like the first time we met him was at the Columbus Theater in Providence, and I was like line was so long, and it was because he was talking to people and he wasn't rushing people.
Yeah.
He was taking photos, and yeah, and the same thing when we met him up at the Coolidge Theater when they did the drive-in. which I really want to get here in Rhode Island. I want them to do that drive-in double feature here. But yeah, he's just so cool. And like that, those events are so worth going to if you're a Joe Bob fan.
Mm-hmm. Now, yeah, just because it was the same situation, because like you said, he's easy to talk to, because I grew up watching Monster Vision, with my grandmother, and I had to talk to him. I told him, I was like, I grew up watching you and my grandmother, and he was just like, oh my god, that's awesome, and
Yeah.
he was able to talk, so it was definitely a good time. He's a definitely great person to meet. Uh, who at any of these conventions probably were like probably the rudest person that you've probably ran across? Because I hear a lot of people are rude. I have
Yeah.
not once run into anyone that's rude. Have you?
Um, the only person that like I can even remotely make a case for that might have been a little rude, and the name is going to escape me, so maybe you'll be able to help me. I used to go to a lot of the Walking Dead conventions,
Yeah.
which you went to with me a couple times, but I went to one, and there was so many people there. I'm trying to remember where this one was. I met David Morrissey, who played the governor.
Hmm.
I met Herschel there. No, yeah, it was. I think Herschel might have been there as well. Met Greg Nicotero there. All of them were amazing.
Yeah.
And then there was the blonde younger girl, which
Hmm.
I not remember her name now. She got killed off. By the time I met her, she was already killed off in a hospital. I think it was.
The younger one, the skinny girl that was always with the son.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, yeah.
Exactly. It was her, and she already been killed off, and I was like excited to meet her. I liked her character, and she was pretty, and it was like, I thought it was gonna be cool. She just wanted nothing to do with talking. It was just like really straightforward. That didn't even smile. It
Yeah.
was like just so. I was like, I just spent like, because they were charging like $40 to $60 per person there for the autograph, and I was like, that was not worth the money. And then meanwhile, T Dog's across the way. He's hollering, and he's a fun dude. And he
Yeah.
was like having a blast over there. And I was like, I should have just gone in line with him. That's the only one that I can say was kind of a letdown. I'm trying to remember if anybody's actually been flat out like rude or anything. I don't think so.
Hmm.
Yeah, I've had some good. Been lucky with the experiences.
Yeah.
Oh, you know who I didn't mention that I met, and I'm so glad I did, was Gunnar Hansen.
Oh, okay. Yep.
And that was cool. That was at Rock and Shock as well. He was
Mhm.
on one side, and Adrian King was on the other side from Friday the 13th. Actually, I did have a friend who went with me to Rock and Shock, and you've met him, my friend Jeff.
Yep.
And he would entertain some of the horror movie stuff. So I say none of my friends were into it. But I should reframe that, because he would at least dabble with it.
Hmm.
Um, I used to just recommend the grossest horror films for him to watch, because I went through that phase where like Human Centipede, Inside. He loved Inside and Martyrs. Like I got him into those, and La Cavaliere, I think is how you say it. That's another one of those French New Wave ones that we had bonded over. But yeah, no, Gunnar Hansen was very cool. And I was very glad to meet him before he passed, because I feel like that's like the thing you have to think about now when these people are making appearances. Like, will I be able to meet this person again? Which is unfortunate, but
Yep. That was the same thing. It was like with Tom Atkins. I was just like, all
yeah.
right, we have to meet him. So
Yeah. I think that's good advice for people who are interested in going to the conventions. Like if you're thinking, should I go to this or not? Like look at the list and
yeah.
think like, when would I have an opportunity to meet this person again? If they're older, are they like oh man, imagine if we got to meet like the tall man.
Yeah.
I guess like, and I know a ton of people who have, because he used to do conventions.
Yeah. And that was the thing. And we had gone to the Phantasm, and it was like the CT Horror Fest, and they had the anniversary. Everyone was there except him, because he passed. But it was cool meeting the whole cast. But like you just said, it would have been cool to be able to meet him.
Yeah. That was Terracon, right?
No, that was a CT Horror
Was it?
Fest. Yeah. Yep.
And Terracon, we met the Ranger, right?
Yeah. That was a good time. He was a funny guy.
Yeah.
So yeah, we've been doing PVD horror for what, since 2018.
Yep.
How would you say being a part of PVD Horror has changed your life?
Good question, Brandon. Good question. um, so interesting. Multiple ways,
Mhm.
probably many ways, actually. So some of it's been like improving certain aspects of myself that like probably needed to get improved. So
Mhm.
definitely have had to learn how to be more social.
Yeah.
And that's something me and you both have struggled with, is like kind of coming out of our shells, not letting our nerves get to us.
Mhm.
Sometimes I can fake it. Sometimes it's hard. Sometimes I'm just like more introverted than others, and I just can't help that. Like I'm kind of an introvert in general, but like I have moments where I can kind of break out of my shell. If I have a drink or two, sometimes it helps. Sometimes, but like I'm trying to learn how to do that without needing a crutch, and that's been like my goal this year more than ever. Um, because like yeah, shyness is something like I don't like that quality about myself, but I also can't deny it's part of who I am. So
Mhm.
like that's been a huge thing for me, is like PVD horror has helped me like understand like there's times where I can't just like be as shy as I want to, or I have to step out and like talk on a microphone or go introduce myself to people.
Mhm.
And it's something I'm constant like I'm nowhere near like good at it yet. So I'm still constantly working at it. But it's been helpful for sure. The other thing is like us interviewing people. I remember when we first did it, and I was like so nervous every single time. And like to the point, and over time, I was like, why am I so nervous?
Mhm.
We're actually good at this. And like every time we finish up an interview, they give us, positive feedback. Like, why are you letting your like get in your head about it? And like it was all just like psychological to myself. So it's like the interview stuff really was like good for me, because I was like, I can do this. And then like the more I started to just like challenge myself, like I used to script out questions. I stopped doing that as much. Like I'll give myself little prompts and try to do it more on the fly. And like I think PVD horror has helped me just kind of like set goals for myself, and like personal goals just as much as like PVD horror goals, and just like work on them progressively and understand like you can pretty much I really have learned like you can do anything. If you can like you really shouldn't set limits on yourself or be like I can't do that, because like chances are you probably can, or you can do some portion
Mhm.
of it or some facet of it. Um a lot of the things that we've had the opportunity to do, I didn't think we would have when we
Mhm.
first set out. I didn't think we would actually have been able to do it. And it's like the other part of it is also getting that mentality, which I love that this mentality has happened, is like if you want to see it, just do it.
Yeah.
If there's something that's like lacking in your community and you want it, just do it yourself. Just make it, you know?
Yeah, because that's the thing. Like you said, it's just like being nervous. Like we would always just sit there like, no, okay, you take the mic, you take the mic, you do it.
Yeah.
Like at the live events, and it just got to the point now where we're just in front and we're just controlling it and just kind of just doing it and just having a good time, because we now know that those people are here for us, and that we made like a outlet for them, and they appreciate us. And so it's just like just to see it happen, and like, oh, look, it's the guys from PVD Horror, or just even seeing someone having our shirt, because I remember Jenny was just like, yeah, I seen a kid with a PVD Horror sweat shirt at the market, and she goes, hey, I know those guys, and she goes, these guys are great. And I'm like,
Yeah, yeah.
so I don't
Yeah.
know.
It's fun seeing the response to it, but like let's say like the pandemic was still going on and we were all in lockdown.
Yeah.
Like even if we were just doing what we were doing during that time, like that meant a lot to me too, because like at that time having an outlet of something that was like not um saturated in stuff, all the negative stuff that was going on in the world, like that was helpful doing this podcast during the pandemic, having like something else to focus on for however long we were recording. We did a lot of interviews during that time. And actually, no, we were also just doing our own stuff and like watching movies and recommending movies. Just
Yeah.
having that as like a thing we had to do so that we could create our episodes was
Mhm.
helpful, because I was like, that for whatever period of time we were doing, that was some time that we weren't thinking about, you know,
Yeah,
being sick or getting sick or something like that. So that was helpful. Um, and then the other thing that obviously has been harder has been like relationships and working through
hmm
maintaining relationships while you're doing business with people that you're friendly with or that you care about. So that's
yep,
been tough too. And then learning that part about myself is like, that's something I struggle with. Like the blurred lines of friendship and business sometimes is hard to balance. And like um learning how to navigate that is definitely something that's been
definitely.
helpful for me. It will be helpful for me in the future. That's the way I take everything. Anything I learn is like, I'm sure that will somehow apply and be helpful down the road.
Yeah, because that's the thing too. It's like just even looking at it, doing this is just definitely made us better businessmen because it's like I look at it and I'm like, damn, like I'm able to run like because I'm like, wow, it's like times you don't even realize we're running our own business. This is a business, and then sometimes it gets lost into that whole thing that we're doing, and it's just like wow, and it's like okay, now I'm ready for like whatever next project we're able to do. So where where would you like to see PVD horror go, like just years from now?
Yeah. So many places, but
Mhm.
in like the shorter term, at some point, I would love to see us doing a horror convention.
Mhm.
I mean, not actually. Let me reframe it. I first would love to do a festival.
Yeah.
I would love to show films. I think
Mhm.
it would be super cool. A convention would be great. I think that's probably more of a longer term goal just because I understand how expensive that could be to put on. And
Yeah.
there's already, us working with festivals. I mean, with conventions is probably more our speed because I think we have a lot we can offer and work and collaborating with people who are already kind of like established doing them might be a better avenue. I don't know. But like just seeing wherever we can put our brand is really where what I want to challenge to see, like, because I just feel like the possibilities are endless. And I love that like the reputation we're getting is, we're helpful to films and to production places because we're all about just like spreading the word and like
Yeah.
getting people, like we're not just like, oh, check out this well-known franchise that everybody knows. It's a lot of like, sure, a little bit of that, like Evil Dead Rise is coming out, like everybody's familiar with it and we're gonna help promote it and stuff like that because we're excited about it too. But then at the same time, check out this film that you probably never heard of from this like upcoming director, you
Yeah.
know and I just think that's kind of what I hope that we can always maintain is like that balance of, yes, I want like obviously to be mixed in there with like big films that are coming out and big names, but I also want to always remember that like our goal was always to kind of help bring unknown horror to the masses as well.
Mhm. So now we've been doing this is our third season. When you look back at the catalog,
Mhm.
what episode do you always that stands out to you the most? Which one stands out to you the most that you just have to like sometimes listen to or kind of like have
Yeah.
someone listen to? Your favorite?
Um Ironically, I barely ever listen.
Yeah.
So it's hard for me to go back and listen after we've edited and I've already listened. I just feel like it gets redundant. I also don't always care to hear my own voice. So
Yeah.
that's a little more challenging. Uh but there have been a couple of like ones that stuck out to me. Uh so the guy who what the hell is the name of the film? Oh geez, that's not a good one to bring up because I can't remember the name. Uh so obviously Tony Todd was a big one for us. I mean, that's obviously one that we would all bring up because that was just like, wow, we're talking to Tony Todd. Noah Segan was another one that was like big to me just because I really enjoyed a few of his films.
Mhm.
So when we got him, I was like, damn, that's awesome. Lorcan Finnegan was who I was trying to remember from Nocebo.
Okay. Yeah.
I really enjoyed that film. So it was that film, but also I loved the conversation because we started to just kind of go off and talk about random stuff. And I think that was like one of the first ones I did by myself. So, and I was trying to challenge myself when I did it. I was like, you got this. Don't be nervous. And, like midway through, I was like, oh, this guy's awesome. And we were talking about just random stuff like um folklore, and we would talk about Salem witches, and just like it was
Yeah.
just cool because like it went all over the place. Hal Haven's interview will always stick with me though because of how personal that got. And
Yeah.
then like the aftermath of like actually getting him out here and hanging with him, and just knowing like kind of what he was going through when that happened, and knowing that like him coming out here
Hmm.
seemed to spark him a little bit and like give him that that charge I think he needed. That whole story was like storyline like of how that took place. I
Yep.
think it was pretty amazing. And like if we can have that impact on anybody, like then we won. You know, if like the fact that like having a conversation, getting someone feeling so comfortable and being able to share some personal information with us, which kind of happened off air, but even in the interview, who's getting kind of personal.
Hmm.
But knowing how that like had a positive impact that helped get him out there again, knowing that he was kind of like in a little bit of a slump, in a big slump, maybe.
Yeah.
Um, I think that's pretty amazing. And you don't get those opportunities every day to have that impact in somebody's life. So the fact that we might have played that role for him or just been like a catalyst in
Yeah.
it, I think is absolutely amazing.
Hmm. And now, just over the last few years, you were able to like finish school and become a therapist, and now you've been able to incorporate horror into some of your cases that you have. Like how has that had changed your life, being able to kind of like take what you love to into what you're working, because a lot of people aren't able to kind of love what they do and then at the same time convert what they love into what they're doing. How do you
It,
feel?
it's something that like I didn't know how it would be received. And when I first started talking about it was like when the idea I brought up to you guys with like how final girls and um like the whole trauma process, like how they recover from trauma. So I started to like develop. I did it, and I started talking about it in school, and like the people seemed like, oh, that's kind of interesting. So I was like, all right, I think there's something here. I presented it to a few people that I would talk to in school, and they were like, there's something with that. So I made like a whole outline of like this is the process that freaking she Nev Campbell goes through in Scream 3, and like Scream
Mhm.
3 is about this complex trauma and like it just doing it and like reading it to people. And then so here's the moment that like I was like, oh wow, this is actually something I think I can do, and this feels awesome. So I had
Mhm.
a patient I was working with who was going through trauma, and we started to do the final girl stuff. So I was having her, I said, pick a, she's actually the one who told me Scream 3 was a great example of trauma. And then I like started to analyze it even further. So I presented the idea of like what a final girl is and how it like they're survivors of trauma and how it impacts their life later. And I gave the example of like Nev Campbell, but then also there's like the Laurie Strode, like we see her later in the films, and trauma's kind of like ruined her almost. And when I presented the information to her, she kind of laughed it off and was like, oh, all right. And she picked a character. She watched all the screen. She was Sydney from the Scream franchise.
Mhm.
And then like we had a few conversations about it following that, and then kind of like it dropped off. Like months later, she told me she had her like Sydney moment. And
Mhm.
I was like, you're still thinking about this. And she brought it back up, and she had been thinking about it the whole time. And I was like, and she was connecting things that happened in her life to the whole outline that we made about like final girls. And I was like, holy shit, this actually connected with this person, and it's something that could probably connect with other people. And then I do this other thing where like depression and like reoccurring things, like we call it an entity because
Mhm.
it's trying to take over you. It's like, what does depression want to do to you? What does it make you want to do? Because you got to do the opposite, you got to fight off the depression basically. So we give it a name, and it's either like a horror character. So I had a kid that I work with now. He picked Chucky as his,
Mhm.
is like the thing that makes him want to isolate and like seclude himself. And one week I met with him, and he was like, I was like, how was your week? He's like, good. I was social all week. I was out in, the common area. I was talking to people. And I'm like, how'd you do it? He goes, I beat Chucky. I was like, holy shit, dude. Like, so like just seeing like that feedback later of people actually like sticking with this stuff and how it like helps them visualize. I'm like, I don't know. This is like actually awesome that like I have this knowledge of stuff and like I can use it to help people. And that has been like mind blowing to me. But here's my struggle now is like I got to figure out I have to do something with. Like I know it's something that can have good impact for people who it connects with. It's not going to connect with everybody, obviously. Like my
Yeah.
mom, it would not connect with my mom. She would not like this. But like for people who connects with, I got to figure out. Like I don't know, and that makes me wonder. I'm like, at some point, am I going to write a book? Or am I going to
Mhm.
um, draw up some outlines for it and get like a website? I don't know. It's cool because it feels like now I have more potential things that I endeavors that I can take on,
Yeah.
and that's really awesome. And then like just like I said before, like having being able to like accept who I am, and
Mhm.
like if you know I tell people this is what I do, and if you like this, then this is something we can do. And if they like it, then it's awesome. And if they don't, I'm like, yeah, well, I'll never talk about a horror movie to you again. And that's probably a lie because I probably will at some point, but like I won't try to force it on you and we'll just do something else. And that's totally fine too. Um, so yeah, that was kind of a long answer to that question, but it's awesome. I like it. I
Yeah, I
love
know, but that's the thing. It's like I said before, like it may be like you said, don't go at it thinking it was a long answer. It's just like we don't always have that outlet to talk to somebody else about the things that we love.
it.
And
Yeah.
so now you were able to kind of like open up a little bit more on that. Because even when you did do that episode and we talked about Scream 3, that definitely did change the way I looked at that film because you can just look at it and be like, oh yeah, that's the worst out of the series. But then it's like, okay, well, it did have its moments and this
Mhm.
is what happened and this is what she was going through, so it definitely, like, once you slow down and look at certain things, you see it from a different standpoint because like you said, me and you are both in this field, and now we're sitting there doing like the horror psych episodes, breaking films down. So like if you want to listen to that episode, we did the film Smile, and I think that that was a great episode, and we have gotten good feedback about that, just breaking that film down and kind of like going over the all the trauma and everything in it. And I think it's really cool that we're able to do that, because it's something that you love and it's something that, and then that's like I work with kids that go through this stuff, and then the same thing with you, just for so many years. We've been doing it for so many years, and it's just in us, and it's
Yeah.
something that we love. And so we were able to incorporate everything that we like to do. So
Yeah. So when I kind of brought that Scream 3 segment in that episode we did
Mhm.
on all the Scream franchise, Matt Chernoff had contacted me after shortly after, and he's like, that was awesome. You gotta like you definitely gotta do something with that. He's like, and that was such a great take on that film.
Mhm.
And yeah, it's cool because like I think like what you said, like a lot of people kind of it's not on everybody the highest on everybody's list. So like
Yeah.
for people to like be able to say like, oh, I can actually look at it in a different way. That's kind of cool. And I think the same with people will find that with Smile. It's already a great film, but when you kind of listen to like our thoughts about that, I think it gives you an even like deeper analysis of it that helps you appreciate it even more. I think like for me, if I know that there's like a message in the film, I
Mhm.
usually want to try to find it, and it does make me appreciate it more when I understand the message at times. So
Yeah, and that's the thing is I think a lot of people go into it like the first time watching it, and like you said, they miss the message, they miss all the little key things because sometimes you're not looking for those things if you don't really know about it, or if somebody doesn't point out to you like, hey, look at this, and then you start to
yeah,
see like a different way. So it's like, hey, we're able to help and assist people to see those little Easter eggs that are being thrown in by the director or just even the writers just doing certain things. So it's just like to see it from a different view. So it's just an angle of just everything. And I think that every film has that if you like really dig deep into something. So I really
yeah.
can't wait to like do the next episode on that.
I so like that kind of reminds me, like our interviews we do with a lot of like the directors of some of like the more indie projects we've done. A lot sometimes like we've walked away from those films feeling kind of like, I don't know how I felt about it.
Yeah.
And then we like do the interview, and then I start to like hear them talk about it, and I'm like, you know what? I actually, now
Yeah.
that they say that, like it gives you a whole new appreciation for a film that maybe you weren't completely positive about how you felt, and maybe it's because you missed the message or you missed
Yeah.
like the intention. And I think that it's helpful sometimes. And like, you know, some of those interviews were really helpful with understanding what the vision was. And it really like made me want to go back and watch a film a second time.
No. And I think that it definitely changed the outlook for all of us, because before we would just sit there and run into something. Like before doing this, we would always say, give our thoughts about how we didn't like something.
Yeah.
But now we're sitting there just like, I can't really just hate on anything that comes out, because it's like that person put so much work into it. Just seeing what we have to do and go through stuff. So it's like that person's putting all their hard work into it. Just like for us to set up a movie night, I have to go through so many things to get this set up and do it, and then get there, and we have to set it up and get it going. And it is what it is. It can be like a bad movie, a good movie, but people are gonna have fun. Like, you know what I mean? So it's just like
Yeah.
that point was just stop and just think about it. Because like I see a lot of people that are making films that go and they bash certain films that are out, but then it's just like, dude, then if you're gonna bash a film like that, don't get mad when somebody bashes your film.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it's like the same thing. Like somebody can be like, oh, well, I really don't like it. I don't really like that podcast. And then they go our podcast, and then they go and put an episode out, and it's not great. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's
Yeah.
like, so
Not easy. People think it's easy to put out like quality, and that's
yeah.
for anything. It's not
Yeah.
easy. So you got to like really, before you give a really informed opinion, you
Mhm.
really want to like check out like other things that are similar, and just like the quality, and consider everything before you really go and bash something.
Yeah. Now, yeah, we kind of like touched on everything, but let's see. Is there anything else that you would like to add in about PVD horror that you would like to see happen like soon, or keep
Yeah.
people on the
Yeah.
things?
The music stuff, like I think, you know, it makes sense because it makes sense more because of who we are than it does because of the PVD brand, horror brand.
Yeah.
But like we're both avid music lovers, and I think
Yeah.
dabbling with events that involve music is something I hope we can accomplish. And I know it's not going to be an easy feat. We have the connects with musicians, but I don't have any experience putting together a music event, so it'll be a learning experience. But like that feels very much like something that should happen sooner than later. I'm hoping that does happen.
Mhm.
And yeah, I hope that we can have other cool experiences where we are able to, you know, bring people here to do meet and greets. I would love to get like, so, you know, we do the interviews with the directors of films. I would love to do it live at some point.
Yeah.
I would love to have an indie filmmaker or, you know, a up and coming filmmaker come introduce their film, do an interview with them, and then screen
Mhm.
it. I think that would be absolutely amazing. I would love to do it on a regular basis, but even if we just got to do it once or twice, I think that'd be great. Um, we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah. Yeah, like those are things that are on our list that we're working at. So definitely stay tuned, because like we just have so many ideas, and we just, we have so many, and we just want to try to get them all out at once, but that's not going to happen. It's going to take time.
Oh, and a PVD horror basketball league for men over 35.
Yeah.
I want to get that going, and that's just for selfish reasons, just because I want to start playing again. I haven't been able to really get involved in playing basketball in forever, and I miss
Yeah.
that. And I want to do a ton of more beer collabs, and
Yeah, definitely.
I love my craft beer, and having Buttonwoods and Origin do a collab beer with us was like, I don't know, that felt special. So
Yeah, I was just I remember that had happened. I was at the pop-up, and I was just like wasted that day, and I'm like,
I was like outside taking selfies with it and like trying to find cool angles. I was just so proud, so proud. So like really hope to do that again. But yeah, this whole thing has just been a really cool experience. I mean, it's been challenging and there's been some ups and downs, and um but like I wouldn't take it I wouldn't replace it with anything else because it's presented me with stuff that I didn't think that I would have the opportunity to do. So it's been cool.
Well, folks, this is a little bit deeper into like our normal episodes. You got to meet Dave, and you also got to meet me a few episodes behind. I think that we probably would continue doing something like this to kind of like check in on each other, because I think that like sometimes like if you're in a group or something like that, you should take the time to kind of like just talk one on one and just have this type of like episode, just kind of like check where you're at, to keep the group going. And I this was a cool experiment, and so it was also a way for you guys to like meet, get to know a little bit more about us, and so on, listen back and kind of like reflect on some of the stuff of ourselves. You know what I mean? Last time Dave kind of like gave me a little input of how he seen how I was on certain
Oh
things.
yeah, I gotta ask that question. I guess I kind of forgot about that. I don't even know if I want to hear this, but yeah, that was a question. You said, "Tell me how you see me," because I said, "Describe yourself." I guess I'm gonna ask you. Go ahead, give it to me. How do
No,
you see me?
yeah, it's the same things. Like some of the things that we talked about earlier about ourselves, like to sit there and like how we've come, how further with just doing this. Like we both were shy and doing everything and adapting to things. No, yeah, but no, yeah, it's at the same time. Like I said, like you always reel everything in and kind of keep me on that path where I need to go, and then like it's great. So it's just like that's why I feel as though this can definitely push forward, because it's like it's being more like laid put together as a team, where it's me and you, where I could sit there and bounce my ideas off to you, and then you could be like, oh yeah, that. And then it's just like, okay, well we'll do this and do that. Like even if we're putting something together, it's really cool to have someone that's on the same page at times when things are going wrong or whatever like that. But I don't know, I'm just really happy where we both are, even
Yeah.
because we both, like you said, we both came a long way. But we this is something that we built together, and
I
then
think one of my like qualities that like I pride myself on is also one of my like probably one of a flaw in the end, but it's like it takes a real lot to like get me mad like about a situation, because my go-to is always to try to figure out like what is this other person's intention, or what are they
yeah.
thinking, like where are they coming from. I automatically go into like that, like let me try to figure out what they're thinking and why they're coming out this way.
Mhm.
But like how it helps me sometimes is like, yeah, when we come up to frustrating situations with people that we're dealing with, it's like I'm always trying to figure out like, well, what's going on with them, like why are they saying that. So sometimes it helps because I can like not think so emotionally immediately, and like it takes a lot to get me heated, but like yeah, but also sometimes it is helpful to, sometimes I wish I got more mad and like could like just tell someone off, and that takes me forever to be able to do that because I'm always like, well, maybe they're saying this, or maybe this is what they're thinking. um but yeah, no, I get that.
Yeah, and then but that's the thing. It's like I feel as though that you could get there, like because it's like sometimes like I want you to, but then it's
Yeah,
like you pull it back, and it's
yeah,
like what I mean. And it's like sometimes it's like fuck it, then get out of the way. I'll be the fucking guy
yeah,
that's just
yeah.
gonna.
No, and like it's something I totally know. It's like I've always been that way. It's
Yeah.
hard for me to get really mad, just because I always, my instinct is always just to go back into like that mode where it's like, well, why did they take it that way, or why did they, like where are they coming from that they're like saying this or whatever.
Hmm.
I wish I could turn that off. It's like it's super helpful for me at work. It's not
Yeah,
super helpful for me in my personal life sometimes, because like it just, I can't turn it off.
yeah, because that's the thing. It's like we know we can't do that at work, but it's like it's home, and it's like
Yeah,
it's a different situation, or just something that we're doing. Like at the same time, you don't want to get into those issues, but sometimes it goes there, and
yeah.
so
No, there's definitely benefits to sometimes just being direct and kind of being a little like expressing frustration, especially when you're
mhm.
dealing with business stuff. Like sometimes there is benefit to just being super direct. And that's hard for me at times. That's another thing that like, I have to like work on. And
Yeah,
But this stuff pushes you, you have to at some point or people walk over you. So
yeah, and that's the thing. It's like I'm telling you, like I'm like, hey, this is business. I'm like in the situation I'm in right now. It's kind of like, look, I gotta like you know what I mean. The way that I see things is because it's like I have like the street smarts of something. It's like so I know that hey, that when somebody's trying to fuck you off in the streets, these people try to do the same shit to you in business, and the people that do it in the business world are so much stupider than what you think that they are. They think that they're smart and they're doing it right in front of you. And I'm kind of, and it's like when somebody's like trying to take something in front of you and they're just sitting there like, dude, I fucking see you.
yeah,
And this is the type of shit that fucking pisses me off.
yeah. When
And it's like, I
people,
can't pull that back.
yeah, and like it bothers me when people come off a certain way when you first meet them, and
Yeah.
then their true colors come out a little bit later. Like that really gets to me. There's something about people who just aren't like who have other intentions or ulterior motives that like that's for me like I immediately just like want nothing to do with those kind of people. But like sometimes you
Yeah.
do need them around. So it's like trying to figure out how do I kind of keep them at bay. Um and shift my mind. And I don't love having to think that way, but it's also I understand it's kind of sometimes you have to. Sometimes you have to do things you don't really want to do.
Yeah.
Like talk in public,
Helps.
you know?
Yeah.
So
And that's the thing. Like you told me, like I can sit back and I'll just sit there and then just be more direct. And then it's like I notice that when I'm direct more with the emails and everything like that now, it's like, oh well, you're doing this personally, like because they get upset because I'm getting back at them in another way. So it's like,
yeah. Yeah,
yeah,
it's all learning, man. We're all just learning as we go. But yeah, no, that's businesses it can be shitty.
no. So well, like I said, this has been a wild experiment, and I definitely want to like go down this path again, and then like we can just have these episodes and kind of just like check in and see how we're doing because it's like I think it's also like when we do those mental health episodes, I think we also need to check on each other because when I notice like it's all the time in like groups or like music like bands or anything like that, things fall apart because of the stupidest shit in the world. And it's like I feel as though like we're at the top of like what we're doing, and it's like, dude, like we got to keep this shit going. So I appreciate you being like my co-host and the partner, business partner, and like doing all these events. I appreciate it because it's like things can be crazy, but like we're also enjoying ourselves at times because we're accomplishing all our goals and stuff and things that we love at the same time as we're having fun.
Yeah.
I think things are gonna get a little better as soon as we find that hole to kind of get everything the way we need to. You know
Oh
what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah. No, there's
So,
there's a spot that we'll get to at some point where I can see us being able to just like breathe a little bit more than we are now, and then
yeah.
we'll I think we'll be like really really happy. But like until then, we're still grinding.
Yeah. So for everybody out there that sees us and you know you guys repost our stuff or anything or just send a message saying we see what you guys are doing like that type of stuff is definitely appreciated. We appreciate it, and I think it's really awesome that everybody's kind of like following our goal and our dream. And we appreciate all the listeners and everybody out there, you know, because sometimes this shit can be really hard. So sometimes we need those things, just like episodes like this
Yeah.
and the one that we had last time. So
Yep. Yeah, and like even just like the what like participation with the stuff like in our on social media with us, just like anything that like when people just are involved and seem to enjoy what we're doing, that just is everything.
yeah,
So, like, thank you guys for doing that, and thank you for if you've listened to this full episode and Brandon's full episode. Thank you guys for actually taking an interest and getting to know us. That means a lot. So thank you.
definitely. So stay tuned for more episodes and more live events and more merch. Thanks for rocking with us. Until the next time, we're PVD Horror. I'm Brandon.
I'm Dave. Have a great night.